Hello, Pad family. How are you? I hope you are doing well. I'm so glad to be on tonight. It's been a wonderful week. I cannot complain. Things are going well. I'm organizing and getting things in order. I think I shared a little bit with you guys last week. Everything is coming together. It's amazing what you can get accomplished when you really focus, when you really prioritize, and you really start putting the time and the energy into something to complete something, whether it's a project, personal development, or whatever it is. So I'm so glad to be on tonight. Happy Sunday. I hope your weekend is going well. And I most certainly hope that you are enjoying this weather as much as possible. I always kind of mention that because the weather can be iffy, right? But it's been consistently nice, so I'm grateful for that. A little less rain, but I know that now that it's is raining and continuously raining, everything is budding so beautifully. The plants, the trees, and it's just like it's just all worth it. I love God's creation and how He just made the seasons and the way they just they fall right after each other and everything just is in sync. So anyway, that's my nature side that's talking to you. So tonight we're going to continue our heart talks series where I'm talking to you heart to heart, from a parent to another parent. My name is Antoinette Clay. I'm the host of Parenting After Dark, and again, I'm glad to be on tonight. I've had a lot of things just popping up in my heart that I really wanted to share. And tonight, I specifically want to talk about one particular thing. So, I just finished watching Tyler Perry's, I think it's one of his movies. It's called Divorce in the Black. It stars Megan Good and I forgot the gentleman's name. I know that his first name is Corey. He used to be married to one of, I think either Tia Tamari. And so I just happened, to be looking, on the computer and I saw it and I said, you know what, let me watch it. And I got a chance, I watched it and I was really like floored. Not that it's a great movie. And one of the things that I really like about Tyler Perry is that he uses everyday situations and things that's currently going on to make movies and to make it a teachable moment to really get a message across. And all of the characters in the movie actually did a phenomenal job. I think it really hit home in terms of being a black woman and being in the black community and knowing just some of the things that go on, and I'm pretty sure they go on in other communities, but just seeing that and really watching it as a mother, it really hit hard, right? Because the movie is about Megan Good, who's the main character, and Corey. They're married, but it started off as a good marriage, or at least it appeared to be, but then it became abusive, and he really just tore this woman down and really just put her through a lot. And so you see that in the beginning, and then eventually he's like, I want a divorce. She's still trying to make it work, like a lot of people sometimes who are in toxic relationships. They feel a burden to try to make it work, because if I don't make it work, I'm not really trying, or maybe I don't really love this person, right? And so it's all of this dynamics that's going on. But from a parent's standpoint, there is a scene who her mother, who is played by Debbie Morgan. Now, Debbie Morgan to me has been out of the movie scene for a long time. I remember her on General Hospital. And That's the last time I've actually seen her in something. She may have been in other things, but her mother is played by Debbie Morgan, and Debbie Morgan. There's a scene in it when her mother discovers the abuse. So her friend, and I forgot this young lady's name, wrote her making good. Her friend wrote down a list of everything this man has ever done to her over the years because they're best friends. They've been best friends for years. And she wrote it down and she gave it to her because she was trying in her attempt as a friend to get her to see, okay, this is really wrong. Like no one should be living like this or be treated like this. So she gives her this list and she happens to take it over to her mother's house because now they're in the process of getting divorced and she's just needing the support. And the mother finds it and discovers it. And in discovering it, she's reading it and she's just broken because she can't believe that the child she raised was actually going through this and never said anything. And I made a note because I wanted to share something because so oftentimes we, you know, teach our kids things, we love them, we share with them, and yet they find themselves in these situations and they don't say anything to us. And they're being treated bad. They're being maybe battered or verbal abuse, emotional abuse. And so there's a scene when she's crying and she basically confronts her about it. And she's like, why didn't you say anything? Why didn't you tell me all these years you've been enduring? Because I think they were married for a long time. I think they got married when she was like 17 or something like that. So now she's approaching 40. So they've been together a long time and she's like, all these years this man has been treating me like this, right? All these years you've been suffering this. Why didn't you tell me? And one of the things that Megan Good says to her mom, and I wanted to make sure I wrote it down because she said, she was embarrassed to really share with her mother what had been going on, right? She was embarrassed. She was, just scared. She really didn't know. But one of the things that struck me about this scene was that she said to her mother, I saw how you helped people, and I thought I can help him. And as a mother, that just hit me because we live our lives as an example of how to show our children how to live in this world. And we instill our values and beliefs in them through our actions and through our words. And so she, in her earnest of being a good woman, a good wife, she said, I saw how you help people and I wanted to help him. And you can see in Debbie's face, like, yes, I'm glad that you did that. But she was like, this was beyond you wanting to help. Like, you took it too far. And I bring that out and I say that because, we teach and we train our kids, we love them, and then they grow up and as emerging adults, they follow our lead sometimes, right? And maybe not in other times. But in this case, you can see the heartbreak. Like, this is great that you did this, but at the same time, look at what it cost you. And in Debbie Morgan's mind, I'm pretty sure as a mother, she's like, I help people, but where did you get this message or how did you translate this message to means that in helping people, you allow yourself to be hurt or to be abused. And it was such a tender moment. And she said, I was just embarrassed. I was embarrassed to come and tell you because she, in that embarrassment, she knew, that her mother and her father had instilled good principles in her. Because the father actually is a pastor of a church and who's actually an ex Marine. And Debbie Morgan, his wife, his first lady, so they have these Christian values and principles that they've instilled in their daughter, and yet she's like, I just don't get it. And it's not until Megan Good really shares, like, I did what you did, but the lesson in that is that she learned that, yeah, you help people, but it went a little too far because it doesn't mean that you help someone at the expense of you being hurt, at you being abused and taken advantage of. And then she went on to say the second thing, a lot of times, and you got to hear this, and I've heard this mentioned by teens themselves. I don't want to disappoint my parents. She said, I didn't want to disappoint you because I see how people give up so easily on marriage. I see how they just walk away, and I didn't want to do that. I wanted to do for better or for worse. But she didn't have a clear understanding of the boundaries. She got lost in this relationship. She was young, first of all, they were teenagers. And so teenagers tend to have that emotional whirlwind experience when it comes to romantic relationships and sex and things like that. It's very intense. And so she told her, she was like, I didn't want to disappoint you, like by coming to you and say I had failed. Because they had, the father later on, and I'll get to that, he discloses that he never wanted her with her and he never made that a secret. So now she's like, in other words, I don't want to come back and say you were right or wrong. But she said, I don't want to disappoint you. I didn't want to disappoint you and just leave. I wanted to work it out. I want to make it work. And and you have to watch it because this scene is so powerful. And Debbie is just like, yes, I get it. And yes, you do, for better or for worse, but not to this extreme. And so I want to say that in teaching our kids and in living our life as an example, we need to have that conversation to kind of like help them put things in perspective. How to establish those boundaries. When is it too far? Now, she realized at this point, like, okay, I did go too far and I did allow this stuff to happen. And so, unfortunately, as it goes on, the father now comes and he shares with her a little bit later on all of the videos that he took of her accomplishing things while she was growing up, track, getting awards and medals, and you know just a lot of things. You saw this vibrant young woman who was strong and confident. And she said, Dad, like, why are you showing me this? And he's like, because I wanted you to see, this is who you are. This is the way you were brought up. He said, but what I don't understand is, he said, in all the years, he said, I showed you how a woman is to be loved and respected and cared for through my actions in the way I treated your mother. How I, held her hand and did all these wonderful things and made her feel loved and cared for and protected. And he said, I can't understand how you didn't get that message, or where did you miss that at? How did you allow this to happen? And I have to say this, we do what we can do, right, in life, and we teach our kids and we train them. I don't have to say this, but they're gonna miss it. And in this case, she didn't just miss it. This was full blown abuse, where this man just did everything he could to degrade and disrespect this young woman. And finally, because he wanted a divorce, she went to her parents' house to kind of just take a break and just really just, start to, you know, to get an understanding of, just life. And now she's going to be single and things like that. But, he couldn't understand as a father how his daughter can end up like this. And so, when we're teaching our kids about life, living it is one example, but then there needs to be a conversation. She was a broken young woman, and he showed her the difference because he actually, at the end of that conversation, he played her wedding, the day of her wedding. And you saw the mother in law, who was very rude and disrespectful, just completely disrespect their wedding right in the middle of the ceremony. And then he says, "You know what? I looked at every video after that, and you weren't smiling in any of those videos." And he was heartbroken because he was like, "I know that I taught you better. I showed you. I lived it." And he couldn't understand how she got to that place. And so oftentimes our kids are going to do things that are going to be really disappointing. They're going to follow our lead, but then they're not going to do exactly what we do, but they're going to miss it. And being there and supporting them and loving them is the key. They have to go through life, and there's things that they have to go through. Whether we agree with them or not, there are decisions that they're going to make that we don't agree with. We're going to do our part, but you have to brace yourself for the fact that they will disappoint. They will not always follow suit. They will do things like this to make you scratch your head like, how? How could you not see that you were in this position and you were so vulnerable and being abused? And it made them angry as parents because they're like, where did I go wrong? They didn't go wrong. It was her choice and her decision, and she made it. And so at that point, they realize we just need to love and support her where she's at. And that later on in her own time and in her healing process, she'll come to understand what happened and how she got to that point. Because it really doesn't, and I have to go back and look at it again, but it really doesn't say how she got to that point. Maybe it was just, being a good church girl. She just thought this is what you do. You go through all of this stuff because this is what good Christian people do. And so we have to make sure as parents that we clarify those messages. Yes, you help people. Yes, you sacrifice. And yes, you try to make relationships work. But you have to clearly set certain boundaries. And you're obligated to self-protect in the sense of not to be guarded, but to guard and to ensure that who you are in your innermost person, your spirit and your soul, who you are, that person, that you keep a watchful eye in how people treat you. And, this is a cutoff point. Or you can give them several examples of a cutoff point because they need to have that help sometimes with setting boundaries and with, putting the brakes or the stop sign up to say, you know what? Yeah, you called me out my name once. Yeah, you hit me. That's a hard stop. And, or maybe they cheated or whatever it is. Certain things are hard stops. It's like, we can't go any further. Yes, a person could be sorry and they can repent and say, you know what, I was angry or whatever. That's fine, right? You can forgive. But in terms of setting those boundaries, you help your children to navigate these situations by helping them to set those boundaries so that they don't fall victim to abuse and being treated unfairly or being disrespected and degraded. And this man did just that. But you know what? I don't want to tell you everything because I want you to go and watch it. She discovers, that she is worthy. that despite everything that happened, she's still worthy to be loved. She's still beautiful. She's still that person that her father saw, and that she grew up in that loving way, being, confident and assertive and things like that. She's still that woman, but she got lost. In that marriage, she got lost. And that's another lesson, that, kids need to learn, like, about relationships and how the importance of the relationship is that it's a two-way street, right? So it's not just one person giving and one person receiving. It's happening. Both people are giving and receiving, respecting, loving, caring, regarding each other, right? That's what healthy relationships do. And so in that, her parents, I believe they realized, like, okay, this is what happened. Our child, who was a good child, we raised her right, but clearly there was something that got lost in translation in the message of how to have a healthy relationship, how to just, establish those boundaries within a relationship, when to know, when it's not good, or when those warning signs or red flags are appearing, to, okay, now say, you know what, this has happened. I think we need to reevaluate this situation. And in that reevaluation, it's not so much for you to discover, why this person abused you, but now to say, this relationship is not working for me. And it's not going to work, right? Because this person has displayed certain behavior that is dangerous. Okay. And so I just wanted to kind of share that with you tonight, that sometimes the message gets lost in translation. We instill these values, we show them, we teach them, we train them, but they still have to make their own decisions. And sometimes they're going to miss it. Even with the best teaching and training, they're going to miss it. And we have to be there to help to support them. But it's going to hurt. It's going to hurt to see your child miss it. It's going to hurt to see them in situations of abuse, situations where this person is just no good, and yet they may keep going back and keep going back, right? Because they believe that they can change. They believe that, they really didn't mean it, you know? All of these things, all of the red flags that we know as parents sometimes is like, girl, they're not going to change. Or, sweetheart, she's not going to change. If she's been slapping you and kicking you and doing all this, even though she said she didn't mean it and she was just angry in the moment, it's not going to stop. Because so oftentimes people who are abusive have been abused. Somewhere in their life, they've been violated to such a degree that now their response is always like that. And if you watch this character in the movie, the husband, he's always on 10. He started off at the beginning on 10. Then to add to it, drugs and alcohol. And his mother, you see why he is the way, because his mother, from the very beginning, okay, she was just over the top, controlling, abusive, manipulative, you name it. She played that character to a T. And all of her sons were under her control. She would snap her finger and they line up, or she say, let's go, and they roll out. And if in that moment you saw the other side of this particular situation, Debbie Morgan, loving, caring, woman of God, you know, just like many of us, go to church, you live a good life, you help people, you minister Christ to people, you pray for people, and then you see Corey's mother, who's the husband, and she's the total opposite. And you can see that he is being controlled and manipulated the whole time by her, by the brothers. And so it's not that there's no hope for him. But one thing that Megan Good said to him in the movie, she was like, "You didn't want to change. And I realized you don't want to change. You want to be this way." This is how he learned manhood. This is how he learned relationships. And so it's a powerful movie. It's a teachable moment. Um, I I don't know if you would be interested in watching it with your team, but maybe you watch it first and then you make that determination. But it speaks volumes to so many relationships that young people are involved in today. And they hold on to these relationships for different reasons. And so as a parent, you have to, really just be sensitive to that and really sit down and have that conversation. If you know that your teen's boyfriend or girlfriend is being abusive, if you are finding your teen doing and exhibiting certain behavior and you know that they know better, but you're not really sure why, all of these things are reasons not only to have conversation, but to now begin to reestablish that relationship with them. So that's all for tonight. I may continue next week with this particular topic, getting lost in the message, getting lost in translation, and bring you another scenario. But we'll see. I thank you for joining me. I look forward to seeing you all next week, Sunday live right here on YouTube at 8 o'clock at Parenting After Dark. Have a great week. And I pray that, again, that make the connections, do the work, love your children, no judging, you know, just be there, be there in whatever fashion that they need you to be. And it's going to be hard because you're going to want to say some stuff, but it's not what you say, it's always how you say it. And even in situations like this, it's good to have those conversations even before they happen, to really make that connection with them and check in with them and see that they're okay, and see, again, what's going on, and how they're doing, and things like that. So, again, I'll see you next week. Take care.